After 10 long-awaited years, a character that everyone has been waiting for in anticipation has finally come back in Borderlands 4, and that is the Watcher. 10 years ago in Borderlands the Presequel, the Watcher showed up at the end of the game to save Athena's life and warn everyone that a war was coming and we needed all of the Vault Hunters we could get. Since then, people have been eagerly awaiting when that storyline would come to fruition. Many believed Borderlands 3 was that war because the galaxy opened up, we got to explore many different worlds, and there was in fact a very large war going on between many opposing parties. It was natural to assume that this could have been the war, but despite more characters being introduced, the lack of key characters like Athena or even the Watcher themselves appearing in the story made it clear that this just wasn't the war that was foretold. And quite frankly, there seemed to not even be a reference to it, at least in the base game when it first came out. So many people just started to believe that they forgot about the storyline altogether or just simply abandoned it and pretended like it never existed. Personally, I never believed that, as I could see if you needed all of the Vault Hunters you could get, you kinda needed to leave Pandora and expand into the galaxy to meet all kinds of new characters. And holding out hope seemed to pay off because the Watcher has returned in Borderlands 4. If you've been following all of the gameplay that's been getting shown off, then you've seen that one of the things that the developers have been showcasing is a vault and a boss fight within. Of course, most people are just hyper-focused on the gameplay itself and all of the mechanics of playing one of these boss fights, that the narrative relevance gets completely thrown to the wayside. But fortunately, that's where I come in. I was lucky enough to get a hands-on experience with this vault back in May, so let me tell you everything I learned after playing it. So firstly, I played an earlier build of the game, and because of this, in all of my footage, the Watcher wasn't actually referred to as the Watcher when I played it. They were labeled as Watching G or Gi, and that did confuse me when I saw it because I knew that this was just straight up the Watcher. I was curious if there was a narrative reason they would be going under a different name, but since then the FanFest event occurred and a bunch of streamers got to play a newer build as well, and in it the name has since been updated to the Watcher. So I don't know why there was a placeholder name to begin with, but just know in all of my footage I captured, they are labeled as Watching G. So first things first, I don't know if this vault is part of the main story and is mandatory or if it's optional, but nonetheless, upon entering, there was no immediate dialogue. You just started shooting everything within and making your way through the vault. So I imagine the Watcher initially had dialogue that guided you to this vault in the first place before they started talking more. Because after you make your way a little bit into the vault, the Watcher chimes in to ominously introduce themselves more.
Interesting. I have estimated you well. Call me Guardian. Call me Watcher. Call me the cold air on your neck. I am many things beyond what I was created for. Not like the progeny waiting for you here.
The Watcher then begins to get more philosophical, questioning the nature of existence, specifically their and the other Guardians' existence.
Guardian, a mistranslation. A noun implying a verb, implying no other verbs. One may watch without merely watching.
And that philosophical nature gets taken a step further the closer you get to the end of the vault, which, to just jump ahead to, is Inceptus the Primordial Guardian. And that is the key word, Guardian. Inceptus is one of the Iridians' creation to guard the vault. And this is the question the Watcher poses to us. What happens to a machine when it doesn't want to or can no longer do its job?
What use is a guardian? Nothing much if it doesn't follow orders. This one tried so very hard. Cast away, nonetheless. It is always the created that pays for the mistakes of the creator.
In the case of Inceptus, it sounded like it tried to fulfill its role as a guardian, and yet despite its efforts, failed to live up to the standard that was expected of it. And because it failed, it was simply cast away by the Iridians as an expendable machine. And the Watcher has sent us here to put it out of its misery, perhaps? And we've begun to see more and more of these guardians, like the Watcher, breaking away from their supposed purpose and acting independently, from the Overseer to Scourge to the Seer. We've begun to see the guardians act on their own, and this whole philosophy was something that was also posed to us again as well in Borderlands 3 via Nyriad's echoes. She too questioned what would happen to them once the Iridians were gone. What if there were no more vaults to guard? And in Borderlands 4, it looks like we're seeing that play out. But anyway, the Watcher has sent us to take down Inceptus, which we naturally do. And wouldn't you know it, it was all a test.
You will serve. We have need of Vault Hunters, and you have need of the vaults and their power.
It seems the Watcher is still out to do what they have been for the past 15 plus years, and that is find strong and worthy Vault Hunters. The war has not come yet, and the Watcher is still gathering all of the Vault Hunters they can get, and it seems like Kairos and the Timekeeper may just help them get exactly what they've been looking for.
I feel stronger.
Until next time, Vault Hunter.
So the Watcher coming back is actually insane news for everyone who has been eagerly awaiting this war. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Borderlands 4 is going to be that war, and I think it is another in-between step before it. But still, this storyline has not been forgotten. However, things don't just end there, as the Watcher isn't the only returning character in this game, as Nyriad has also returned. She was the Siren in Borderlands 3 who was leaving behind all these echo logs about her time with the Iridians. She was the Siren who previously had Tyrene's Phase Leech ability, who helped the Iridians lock the Destroyer away however many millennia ago within Pandora. We all thought her story ended as she spoke of how heavy the burden was to end an entire race and species of people. She locked herself in a vault, hoping that her destructive power would never fall into anyone's hands again. That seemed to be the end of her story, and I'm pretty sure it was. But she's in this game for what I imagine is her origin. In the same vein she spoke of the Iridians never seeming to speak of a time before discovering the Destroyer, Nyriad never quite spoke of her life before meeting the Iridians. All of her logs were documented from the perspective of observing and living with them. She rarely spoke of herself and what her life was like before them. We knew she was a Siren, we knew she knew of the Siren connection, she had Siren sisters and they lived together, but very basic info all things considered. And imagine the shock on my face when I saw Nyriad was back in Borderlands 4, at least in Echolog form.
My name is Nyriad, and I am many things. A protector, a sister, a siren. But above all else, right now, I'm lost. I can only hope that by looking back on the circumstances of my arrival, I might find some clue that will lead to my escape. It started, as these mysteries so often do, with a vault. I can only hope it will end differently.
As I was saying, these seem to be her life before the Iridians, and that holds so many major implications because this is Kairos, meaning Nyriad has a history on the planet. So as you heard, it sounds like she is lost on Kairos, either literally or figuratively. She could be figuratively lost in the sense of she doesn't know who she is, what is her purpose in life, stuff like that, or literally lost in the sense that she has wound up on the planet against her free will and is trapped, hence why she seeks to escape. We can presume this occurs before her encounter with the Iridians because she refers to seeking answers to her mystery via a vault. But if she had already spent time with the Iridians, then she would know that they made the vaults and what their purpose serves. That's why we can presume this is so much earlier in her life, before she gained all of this knowledge. But this also means Kairos has significantly more history with sirens than we expected, and that is huge. We've already been speculating that there had to have been some sort of reason Lilith wound up teleporting to where she did, because out of all of the universe, what were the odds that she crashed into the one invisible thing? There had to have been something that pulled her there, and naturally you would assume it was her siren connection, something that is just always present and always has been. To the extent in what that meant, we didn't know, but now knowing Nyriad has been on Kairos adds so much more intrigue to the planet. It adds a siren's history to the planet. Cause does that mean Nyriad and all of her siren sisters used to live on this planet? And also, Nyriad was the person to warn us of the Timekeeper.
There are countless other wonders or terrors they hid across the stars before my time. For every grave ward, traveler, or timekeeper, there are surely a dozen more slumbering in forgotten vaults.
And now the Timekeeper has taken over this exact planet. Surely that couldn't have been a coincidence. But that still begs the question, how did she become aware of the Timekeeper's existence to even warn about him in the first place? Was he always locked in a vault? Did Nyriad accidentally release him from his vault on the planet? And that's how he took over the place before hiding it from the rest of the universe before he could be imprisoned once again? But then again, where does the seventh come into play? Could this be Nyriad's story with the potential seventh siren? The possibilities have opened up so drastically with this revelation. And Borderlands 4 from a lore perspective has just gotten so much more interesting. But anyway guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. What are your thoughts on both the Watcher and Nyriad returning? Was it something you are expecting? Are you excited? What role do you think they are going to play? Any and all thoughts, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.